In today's video, I'm going to address a surprisingly common question that I get from male retroactive jealousy sufferers. And the question basically boils down to, I can't stop thinking about my partner's past, it's driving me crazy, it makes me feel sick, but at the same time, it kind of turns me on. What's going on? My name is Zachary Stockill, and since 2013, I've been working one-on-one with thousands of men and women from all over the world, helping them overcome retroactive jealousy, helping them answer questions like this for themselves, helping them save their relationships. If you'd like more information about my work or you'd like to work with me one-on-one, please visit my website at retroactivejealousy.com. Okay, I got a comment from a viewer called Jorn, or Yorn maybe. Yorn is probably right. Yorn asks, how can it be that imagining your partner in bed with others causes you so much pain on the one hand, but turns you on the other? It seems that one part of us is magically drawn to these mental movies and draws immense pleasure out of it, while the other part is pushing back. Is it possible to make any sense out of that? Would be interesting to hear your thoughts. Okay, thank you for your very interesting question, Jorn. And as I mentioned at the top of this video, I've received some variation of this question surprisingly often in my work on this topic over almost 10 years, where a lot of particularly male retroactive jealousy sufferers, on some level they're eroticizing their partner's past and they're getting some kind of sexual gratification, or they're kind of turned on by their partner's past on one level, even though it's so painful to think about on another level. So first off, as a disclaimer, I'll just say, the human brain and human psychology and human sexuality is incredibly complicated. I mean, there's a fetish for everything. Anything you can possibly imagine, there's a group of human beings who are turned on by it. I mean, this can range from the absolutely crazy to the mundane to, everything in between. If you just Google around, sexual fetishes, you'll find all kinds of examples, including a lot of that I'm sure you haven't thought of at all. Research shows that we're pretty much the horniest species on the planet. I mean, we, fornicate, we have sex more than I think any other species on the planet. Human beings are so drawn to sex and sexuality. We have sex for all kinds of reasons that don't have anything to do with reproduction. And the human brain, as it is often said, is literally the most complicated object in the cosmos. It's the most complicated thing that we have found on the planet. So all this is to say that humans are complicated, you're complicated, I'm complicated, and human sexuality is especially complicated. So the fact that you are slightly or maybe even very turned on by your partner's past could indicate a number of things. Number one, obviously, it could indicate that you have somewhat of a cuckold fetish. In other words, the thought of your partner making love to someone else or in bed with someone else or whatever, you may not even want this in reality, but just the thought of that turns you on. And there are a lot of people like that. There are obviously people who take this to the extreme where they'll go to swingers parties or they'll have, all that kind of stuff. There are people who go to that extreme, but there are plenty of others who just kind of get some kind of pleasure out of the thought of their partner with someone else, which may sound absolutely nuts to a lot of more typical retroactive jealousy sufferers, but it is a fact, it is true. So that's not so unusual, and if you do fit in this category, you shouldn't beat yourself up, or you shouldn't feel weird or strange or whatever. I mean, I'm a libertarian. My view is, whatever you want to do is cool, man. Like, as long as it's between consenting adults and no one's getting lied to, no one's getting hurt, have a grand old time. Now, that is one possibility, but it certainly isn't the only possibility. More likely, I would imagine, is two things. Number one, you're either doing it currently or you have done a lot of it in the past, is watching porn. I would imagine you're a porn viewer because when you're constantly consuming all kinds of graphic sexual imagery and maybe you've been watching pornography since you were a very young man, this can really add a lot of fuel to the retroactive jealousy fire. And I've noticed that people who watch a lot of porn or who have watched a lot of video pornography in the past, they seem to me to be more likely to be eroticizing their partner's past in this fashion, where they can't stop thinking about it and it makes them sick on one level, but at the same time it kind of turns them on a bit on the other level. If that sounds like you, I would strongly encourage you to take a break, maybe even a permanent hiatus from watching video pornography, because there's all kinds of data and surveys and research that shows that men who watch video pornography, sometimes they get in these modes where they're watching all kinds of porn and they're trying to find new stimuli and they go to the most extreme versions of pornography to, get that original thrill that they once had from pornography. The point is, consuming a lot of video pornography can really skew your sexual perspective, so to speak. It can mess up your sexuality in some ways where things that never used to turn you on all of a sudden turn you on. And, you could argue, well, what's wrong with that? Nothing necessarily, but if you're trying to overcome retroactive jealousy on any level, it's a really bad idea to keep watching video pornography, because one of the common symptoms of retroactive jealousy is what I call mental movies, where you're picturing your partner in bed and picturing all kinds of crazy things. You can't seem to shake them. And obviously, consuming more graphic sexual imagery in the form of video pornography is probably not a very good idea. I'll also say that you should probably Google something called the Madonna whore complex. I believe Sigmund Freud was the first one to coin this term. But basically, a lot of men go around and they kind of slot women into one of two categories. So in the one category, there's the Madonna, the sort of virginal mother, matriarchal figure. On the other hand, there's the whore, there's the stripper, there's the porn star, there's whatever. And some guys have difficulty reconciling that many women have kind of both of these qualities inherent to them, where a woman can be incredibly sexually expressive and good in bed and just really adventurous and a lot of fun and just, kind of wild, for lack of a better term. But at the same time, that same woman could be an absolutely incredible doting mother. But a lot of guys don't see it that way, or they at least get locked into mental patterns where they lose complete sexual interest in their wife, for example, after she becomes a mother. Because now he only sees her as the Madonna. He can't get any kind of he can't get turned on by her because he puts her in this kind of Madonna category that is completely not sexual at all. So think about whether or not you're experiencing something like the Madonna whore complex, where you're kind of trying to figure out who your girlfriend is, and thus maybe you're eroticizing her on some level to turn her into the whore. And I don't mean that in the pejorative sense. I mean, you're trying to eroticize her maybe because you're trying to slot her in a certain category, like you don't see a future with her, so she's only fitting into this one category. I'd also encourage you to take some time and really consider your own sexual fantasies. Maybe after you spend some time, detoxing from video pornography. Spend some time thinking about what really turns you on and what you would like to explore with your partner and what is genuinely your sexual desire. Get clear about that stuff in your calm moments and kind of have that as a guiding light. And realize that maybe your perspective is being completely skewed on what turns you on because you're watching a lot of porn, because you're eroticizing your partner's past, because you're trying to find some way out of this terribly painful retroactive jealousy. So maybe on one level you're thinking, well, if I just eroticize her past to such an extent that it actually turns me on, maybe this will help me get over retroactive jealousy. I'll mention, I was watching a podcast many years ago, maybe not many years ago, a few years ago, with the American comedian Jim Norton, who I really like. He's extremely, just very much an open book. He's into all kinds of kinky stuff and he's very unapologetic about it. And he related a story on Joe Rogan's podcast about retroactive jealousy. He didn't use that term, but it was very clear that that's what he was dealing with. That's what his experience was. And when he was talking about retroactive jealousy, just being absolutely tormented by his then girlfriend's sexual past, he said basically that the way that he overcame that was eroticizing her past to like a crazy extent, where they would, and I don't mean crazy in a bad way necessarily, I mean an extreme extent, where he'd be in bed with his partner and he would ask her to, give me more details and talk about it. What it was like when you were with your ex, and what was that guy like, and what was this guy like? And while they were in bed together, he would inspire her and ask her to open up about these things. And he said basically, if I recall the story correctly, that was his way out of retroactive jealousy, just eroticizing it to an extreme extent. And eventually it just was not an issue for him anymore because he'd kind of transcended the pain around it via his erotic/sexual life. Now, I'm not judging that necessarily. When it comes to this issue of retroactive jealousy, my basic philosophy is whatever works. I mean, if that sounds appealing to you, then my God, God bless, and I wish you well. However, I don't think that is necessarily a wise course of action for most people who struggle with this issue. My opinion is, the path to healing, the path to peace of mind is pretty much the same for all of us. We've got 10 years of research, 10 years of data, 10 years of student success stories to prove that the way through this issue is pretty much the same for all of us. So by all means, be open to everything. And if something sounds really appealing, some pathway to healing or peace of mind, if that sounds really appealing to you and it resonates with you and it seems like that could be realistic, then by all means pursue that. But beyond, it could be a bit dangerous to go down that road too much because you could end up doing some damage or confusing your sexual psyche even further the more you attempt to eroticize your partner's past. In my view, there are much easier, much more straightforward paths to freedom from retroactive jealousy than that. And if you're interested to learn more about that, or you'd like to hear more about my thoughts on the topic, please click the link in the description where you'll find all kinds of free and paid resources that will help you take the beginning steps toward overcoming your girlfriend's past for good and moving on with your life, leaving retroactive jealousy behind. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you got anything out of this video today, please take a minute to let me know by clicking the like button below. I'll also ask you to please leave a comment beneath this video. Tell me what you think. Good, bad, ugly. I would appreciate hearing from you. And while you're at it, please be sure to subscribe to my channel as well to be notified of new videos moving forward. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.